wasn't just a race car driver. He wasn't just a stunt man. He wasn't just the guy behind Gymkhana. He was all of those things, and more. To the motorsport world, Ken was something different. A visionary who blurred the lines between athlete, filmmaker, entrepreneur, and cultural icon. He didn't follow trends, he created them. He didn't inherit the racing crown, he welded it himself. Before the viral fame and billion-view YouTube runs, Block was a co-founder of DC Shoes. That's where it began. A self-made action sports entrepreneur who built a brand from scratch and sold it for hundreds of millions. But even then, money wasn't the goal. Passion was. Risk was. Motion was. When he turned his focus to racing, the world watched him evolve from an amateur rally enthusiast into one of the most captivating figures in the global car scene. His Gymkhana series, insane choreographed runs through cities, shipping yards, and mountain roads, redefined what car culture could be. It was cinematic, it was loud, it was fearless, and it was pure Ken Block. But here's what most fans didn't know. By late 2022, Ken was doing something rare, slowing down. Not in the literal sense, he was still ripping sideways at 100 miles per hour, but personally, he was focusing on family. He spent more time at home in Utah. He helped guide his daughter Leah's blossoming racing career. He stayed off camera more often, trading global press tours for quiet days in the mountains. Still, he was chasing adrenaline, just not always in a race car. One of his lesser-known passions was snowmobiling, particularly off-trail, backcountry routes that tested skill and instinct. It wasn't new to him. He'd been doing it for years, privately, passionately. But it never made the highlight reels. Until it did. One final time. And on January 2nd, 2023, the ride that was meant to be just another moment of peace and thrill would become the last ride of a legend. What happened next would shake the motorsport world and leave behind questions no burnout could erase. January 2nd, 2023 was meant to be a normal day. For Ken Block, it started with family, a bit of downtime, and plans for a snowmobiling session in the hills near his Utah home. The location? Mill Hollow, a remote section of Wasatch County, a place locals know as both breathtaking and unforgiving. It wasn't unusual for Ken. He knew the terrain. He had experience. Snowmobiling wasn't a reckless hobby. It was a skill he'd refined, just like rallycross, just like Gymkhana. Ken thrived in environments where control and chaos danced on a razor's edge. And backcountry snow was just another version of that. He wasn't alone that day. Reports confirmed that Ken was riding with a group of friends, each on their own machine, traversing deep snowdrifts and inclines that only experienced riders would attempt. Conditions were tough. The area had received heavy snowfall in the previous days, creating what backcountry riders refer to as trap snow. Beautiful, but treacherous. Sometime that afternoon, Ken rode off solo toward a steeper grade. He attempted a climb on a powerful snowmobile, one capable of immense torque and speed, but something went wrong. According to the official report from the Wasatch County Sheriff's Office, the snowmobile upended on a slope and flipped. The machine rolled backward, landed on Ken, and caused fatal injuries. It was instant. No one else was involved. No signs of recklessness. No stunt gone wrong. Just a man, a machine, and a devastating moment. Emergency services were called immediately, but when responders arrived, it was too late. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Ken Block was 55. For a man who had walked away from rollover rally crashes near misses on Pikes Peak and stunt setups that defied physics, this was the ending no one expected. Quiet, isolated, tragic. The world found out just hours later. First through official law enforcement channels, then via a heart-wrenching post from Hoonigan's social media account. It's with our deepest regrets that we can confirm that Ken Block passed away. Ken was a visionary, a pioneer, and an icon, and most importantly, a father and husband. It didn't feel real, but it was. When the news broke, fans and professionals alike were stunned and confused. How could someone like Ken Block, a man with near supernatural control behind the wheel, lose his life to something like a snowmobile? The truth is, snowmobiling, especially off-trail and in mountainous terrain, is among the most dangerous motorsports in the world. And unlike race cars, there are no roll cages, no safety harnesses, just layers of gear, a helmet, and your instincts. Experts weighed in within days of the incident. The terrain at Mill Hollow was steep, deceivingly so. Climbing a hill on a snowmobile can turn deadly in a split second if the sled loses momentum or traction. When that happens, the rear treads grip and can cause the machine to loop out, essentially flipping over backward onto the rider. This type of accident is known in the snowmobiling world as a reverse rollover. It's rare among experienced riders, but not impossible, especially when climbing deep powder with powerful machines. Ken Block wasn't reckless. Every account, from those who were with him to those who reviewed the scene, confirmed that. He had the gear, he had the knowledge, he had the respect for the risk. But snow doesn't care who you are. And when thousands of pounds of steel and ice come crashing down, there's no escaping physics. It wasn't about carelessness. It wasn't even about a mistake. It was simply bad luck in a high-risk environment that Ken knew, understood, and had probably navigated dozens of times before. And that's what made it so hard to process. For fans, for friends, for his family. Because if he could be taken that quickly, that suddenly, anyone could. The moment the announcement hit social media, the global automotive and action sports communities froze. Ken Block wasn't just admired, he was beloved. His death triggered an immediate wave of grief that transcended brands, countries, and rivalries. From Formula One to grassroots rally, from skateboarders to snow sports athletes, the tributes came flooding in. Travis Pastrana posted, "Ken was the guy who did it all. It was that our guy, the one who did things his way, with joy and rebellion and artistry, was gone." He left behind more than just a garage of Hoonicorns and Hoonitrucks. He left a movement. Behind the viral stunts and roaring engines, Ken Block was something far more grounded, a family man. To his 3 kids, and especially his daughter Leah, Ken wasn't a celebrity. He was dad. The guy who helped with homework, who made time between races to catch up on family dinners, who showed up at the track not to film, but to cheer. In the months before his death, Ken had become increasingly focused on something he'd never talked much about in interviews, his role as a mentor to Leah. At just 16, she was already carving out her name in motorsports. She wasn't racing on the family name. She was earning her own. Ken was hands-on, teaching her everything from throttle control to how to handle a wrench. Videos surfaced of him quietly standing off to the side at her races, giving feedback, nodding with pride when she crossed the finish line. No entourage, no fanfare, just a dad watching his kid live the dream. And it wasn't just motorsports. Ken was shifting his priorities. He was traveling less, spending more time in Utah, backing off from some of the commercial projects that once filled his schedule. Friends say he talked about balance, something he'd struggled with during the peak Gymkhana years. That's what made the loss so devastating. Because it didn't feel like Ken was fading away. It felt like he was entering a new chapter, one that blended his passion with purpose, his legacy with family. The day he died wasn't supposed to be a stunt or a production shoot. It was just him, out in nature, taking a breath. A man who had spent his life pushing the limits, finally finding some peace. And then, in a flash, it was gone. Ken Block didn't just drive cars, he built empires. From DC shoes to Hoonigan, his fingerprints were all over the culture of speed, rebellion, and creativity. He was never content with just racing. He wanted to redefine what being a driver meant. Hoonigan started as a passion project, a place where gearheads, skaters, BMXers, and speed junkies could all converge. A brand, yes, but also a community. And with Gymkhana, he didn't just promote that community. He gave it a language. 10 Gymkhana films, each one more insane than the last. Drifting through cities, sliding under low-riders, threading the needle between trains and helicopters. These weren't race videos. They were cinematic events, watched by hundreds of millions. But even as the views exploded, Ken never let the vision get diluted. Every Gymkhana car, whether it was the Hoonicorn Mustang, the Hoona truck, or his electric Audi, reflected his input, his obsession with detail, his refusal to compromise. He didn't want sponsors dictating the story. He didn't want networks shaping the edit. He wanted to create, freely, radically, authentically. That ethos bled into everything Hoonigan touched, from merch to YouTube content. It wasn't about selling you something, it was about pulling you into the garage. And yet, even as Hoonigan grew into a global brand, Ken kept it real. He was still the guy who got his hands dirty, who tuned his own cars, who high-fived every kid at a car show. So, when the news of his death hit, it wasn't just fans mourning. It was an entire subculture realizing their leader, the guy who made it cool to be obsessed with cars, was gone. Ken Block wasn't done. Not even close. When he passed, he had a slate of projects that were mid-build, mid-film, and mid-dream. And that might be the hardest part for fans to accept, how much more he had planned to give. First, there was Gymkhana 12, already in development. The follow-up to Gymkhana, his groundbreaking film featuring the electric Audi S1 Hoonatron. The first installment had blown minds with its silent tire smoke ballet on the streets of Las Vegas. But Ken wanted more. Quieter fury, higher stakes, bigger visuals. He was also working closely with Audi on a future-forward electric rally program, something that blended sustainability with raw performance. A chance to once again reinvent what car culture could be. And let's not forget his off-road racing plans. After dominating tarmac and snow, Ken was returning to dirt. Rumors swirled that he was eyeing a comeback at Baja or even Dakar, fueled less by fame and more by curiosity. Could he master the next frontier? Then there was Leah. Ken had begun filming a docuseries centered around her rise through the ranks. Not some overproduced reality show, but a raw, honest look at a young driver carrying the torch. It was going to be his final great gift, passing the wheel to the next generation. Now, those projects sit in limbo. Some may be finished, some may not, but all are haunted by the same question. What if he had one more year, one more film, one more race, one more lesson for his daughter, one more ride? In the wake of Ken Block's death, one question lingered more than any other. Who carries the torch now? The most visible answer came almost immediately. His daughter, Leah Block. Still just a teenager at the time, Leah was already carving her own path in motorsports, backed not by her father's fame, but by her own undeniable talent. But after Ken's passing, her racing took on new meaning. This wasn't just about laps or podiums. It was personal. In 2023, Leah made her debut in high-profile competitions, rally stages, track days, even appearances at Goodwood and Hoonigan events, all in tribute to her father. Fans noticed her driving style, her poise, her fearless lines through corners. It all echoed Ken. Hoonigan, too, stepped up. The company Ken founded continued to produce content, but with a slightly more reverent tone. They launched tribute videos, memorial merch lines, and curated moments that captured not just Ken's stunts, but his values: creativity, community, courage. And then came the burnouts. From LA to Tokyo, Detroit to Dubai, fans in every corner of the world laid rubber in his honor. Not to go viral, not for clout, but because that's how Ken would have done it, sideways and smiling. Ken Block's influence didn't die with him. It multiplied. In the workshops he inspired, in the young racers he mentored, in every person who realized you didn't need a big budget to make big noise. You just needed vision. And most of all, it lived on in those who never met him, but felt like they knew him. Because Ken never put on a front. He was always just real. It's easy to look at Ken Block's life through the lens of horsepower and hype. But when you zoom out, you see something deeper, something more rare. You see a man who lived with intention. Ken wasn't reckless. He was calculated. Every stunt, every race, every risky venture, there was planning, engineering, precision behind it. He didn't gamble with his life. He engineered the chaos. And behind that chaos was clarity. He wanted to build. He wanted to inspire. He wanted to show the world what was possible when passion met action. Even his career pivot, from skate and streetwear tycoon to race car driver at nearly 40 years old, defied every rule of success. But Ken made his own rules, and then he invited the rest of us to break ours too. In the automotive world, where egos can be louder than engines, Ken was grounded, quiet off camera, kind to fans, generous with his time. He helped dozens of young creators get their start. He collaborated without gatekeeping, and he treated burnout videos with the same seriousness as a WRC race. Because to him, joy was the fuel. That's why his loss hit so hard. Because it wasn't just a driver we lost, it was a visionary, a guy who reminded us that speed isn't dangerous, wasting time is. And when you looked at Ken's life, he didn't waste a second. As the world slowly adjusted to a world without Ken Block, one thing became clear. He never really left. His image is now etched into murals, fan art, and the hearts of anyone who ever took a corner too fast with the windows down. His cars, like the Hoonicorn, the Hoonitruck, the custom Audi EV, aren't just machines. They're symbols of what it means to build without limits. But maybe the real legacy is even simpler than that. It's in the footage of him sitting quietly next to Leah, coaching her without ego. It's in the way he always gave credit to his crew. Behind every tire smoke masterpiece was a team, and Ken never took the spotlight alone. It's in the words he didn't say, but lived by. Don't just drive fast, drive with purpose. And that locked-in, hyper-focused stare he gave every time the countdown hit 0? It's the look of a man who knew exactly who he was, and exactly what he was doing here. So now, when fans do a donut in an empty lot, when Leah wins a race, When a young builder says, "I want to be like Ken Block." That's the legacy. Not the cars, not the merchandise, not even the films. It's the reminder that you can build your dream from scratch. Sideways, if you have to. Rest easy, Ken. The tires are still burning, and the world's still watching.